the guys would probably, looking back now, they probably had a crush on me, but they teased me to no end, and I was so frustrated. They would say things like, "You ain't white," or excuse me, "You ain't black. You can't be black." And then me, I'm like, "But I am," and I'm naive. I'm trying to prove, like, my mom's black. You can see her when she picks me up today. "What's your mom's name?" "Stephanie." Her name, that's a white name. Your mom ain't black. I'm like, oh my God. So it's like having to prove to them, that I am in fact black, and then like getting braids. Oh, look at the white girl with braids, because my mom would keep my hair done, and just little things like that. And then, even going a little bit further, when I got to like eighth grade, ninth grade, and into high school, um, terms like, "Oh, she's a mutt. She's so mixed up. She don't know what she is."
We'll discuss race and how it plays a factor, and how we didn't even talk about this topic because we were afraid.
A Black Executive Perspective.
We are coming to you live from the new BEP studio for another thought-provoking episode of a Black Executive Perspective podcast, a safe space where we discuss all matters regarding race, culture, and those uncomfortable topics people tend to avoid. I'm your host, Tony Tidbit. So we're very excited about the show that we have for you guys today. But before we get started, we want to make sure that you check out our partners at Code M Magazine, whose mission is to save the Black family by first saving the Black man. So check them out at codemmagazine.com. That is codemmagazine.com. So today, we sit down with Samada Tobar for a powerful conversation on what it means to lead while healing. As an Afro-Latina executive, minister, and mother living with ADHD, Samada opens up about showing up fully in spaces that wasn't built for her. From the pressure of code switching to the sacred work of breaking generational cycles, she shares how authenticity, faith, and resilience have shaped her path. Today's episode is a reminder that you don't have to shrink to succeed, and you don't have to be fully healed to lead with power. Let me tell you a little bit about my girl, Samada. Samada Tobar is a transformational HR leader, consultant, and minister with over a decade experience to building human-centered workplace cultures. As an Afro-Latina woman, she brings a unique lens rooted in equity, empathy, and lived experience. Samada is passionate about creating spaces where people feel seen, valued, and empowered to grow. She speaks openly about navigating ADHD, anxiety, and depression while leading teams and ministries, showing that authenticity and leadership can coexist. Samada Tobar, welcome to a Black Executive Perspective podcast, my sister.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, we're glad to be here. And look, we're so excited about what you're going to talk about because obviously a ton of people deal with or have had those issues that you want to, dive into today. So I know our audience is going to get a lot out of it. So, but before we get into the heavy stuff, tell me a little bit about where you're currently residing and a little bit about your family.
So I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I was born and half raised here, and I have two beautiful daughters. One is an adult, one is a new teenager, and then I have two beautiful grandbabies, age 4 and 2, and they are my world. So I'm busy over here between juggling that career and trying to have a personal life. It's a lot.
That is a lot, and congratulations. And then why did you? Quick question. You just got finished saying that how busy you are and stuff that you got going on, and the family, work, ministry. Why did you want to come on the Black Executive Perspective podcast talk about this topic?
Well, it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of this podcast, and I'm super proud of the work that you are doing, as well as your colleagues. But also, I think that it's time to shine a light on this topic that can kind of carry a heavy stigma, especially in corporate spaces. And I feel like my experience is not for nothing. And I want to make sure that if I can be a voice that can be an advocate, to bring awareness, to bring education, then I want to do that. I want to do my part.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And just to be transparent with the audience, Samada is my daughter. Um, and I'm so proud of her. And she's going to come on and talk about things. Some of them I know, some of them I don't know, or I'm not very educated on. So I'm excited that she's willing to come on and share. So you ready to talk about it?
Let's go.
All right, let's talk about it. So you remember it's a song. I forget who the group is, and it goes, "Who's that girl?" You remember the song? Who that is?
Well, I don't I think we're talking about two different ones because my generation had Eve talking about who's that girl, but I know that there was one
No,
that
no, no,
came
no, no,
before
no.
that.
That's the one I'm talking about. Eve
Oh,
saying,
oh
"Who's
yeah,
that girl?"
absolutely. La
Right?
la
Remember
la la
that?
la la. Yep.
Exactly. That's the one I'm talking about, right? So when
hmm
you let's just paint a picture here. When you hear "Who's that girl?" which part of your identity rises to the surface first?
That's the very unique thing about me. Um, they all rise,
Like when you
and
say they all rise, like what do you mean?
like it's not my black side that rises first. It's not the Mexican. It's not the Puerto Rican. It's like they are all intertwined and they all come to the front. So I think that with wholeness and the journey that I've walked, there's something in me that doesn't. I don't do okay with people identifying me just as, oh, she's a Puerto Rican woman, or oh, she's a black woman. I'm like, gently correct them. Nope, I'm actually all encompassing. I'm all of them at all times.
So let's back up. Let's talk about, because one of the things a lot of people struggle with is, people try to put people in boxes. Okay. And you just got finished saying it. Are you Mexican? Are you Puerto Rican? Are you black? Are you white? All these things. And it's a lot of pressure. And then more importantly, knowing that you don't check all those boxes, you check them all, but from a holistic standpoint, it makes it tough to even explain to somebody, right? There's the pressure of the anxiety. I got to tell you everything. So let's back up a little bit. Talk about growing up and understanding that you bring all these different ethnicities together. And how was it growing up, going to school? What did you recognize about yourself being different? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So growing up was interesting because I was with in between two households, back and forth. But being with my grandmother on my dad's side, she took a large role in shaping my identity from a very young age. She only spoke Spanish in the house. My grandfather only spoke Spanish, and my aunts, they would, go back and forth between Spanglish and my bio dad would only speak English. And so it was put in me from a really young age, you're going to speak both languages. And I did not like it at first because it was frustrating because I was acquiring both languages simultaneously. That's not typical normally. But then being around the culture, the food, the music, the dance, there's a strong magnetic pull towards that. And so it's something that me growing up, at least I couldn't shy away from it or deny it. And then we have, my mom's side of the family and my extended Franklin family. And we see the music there, and we see like the pride and presentation and how you present yourself and how you walk out the house. We see the discipline that comes, with being a part of a black household, and how hard our parents and our aunties and our uncles worked, and that was embedded in me as well. And so there's two sides, of the same coin. They have a lot of similarities, and then the differences are not as pronounced as you would think.
So like, well, let me back up first. So was I what? I was too tough, a disciplinarian when you were a kid. What was I?
No, my cousins would probably say something different, but because I'm the oldest and I'm a girl, I had a different experience.
Oh, you
So,
saying Antoine and Anthony and all of their, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Now
was tough on
I
them.
witnessed that, but I wasn't as hard-headed as them, so naturally I didn't get it as
No,
tough as
you did
everyone else
not get
did.
it as much as they did, right? Because they were boys, and yeah, they were hard headed. But
Yeah.
but let's back up though, right? Um, so living in two worlds, you go into school, you have a pool on both sides. How did that make you feel? What was the experience of being in those two worlds? And how did you think, or how did the world see you? Talk a little bit about that.
I feel like when people looked at me, especially, when I was younger, they just looked at me with confusion, like, what is she? Is she white? No, her hair's a little too coarse to be white. And the way that carries herself, they just didn't know. And so, I was taught as a young girl to be proud of my, heritage. And so I would let them know. But deep inside, I, was still walking around with a little bit of confusion just because I didn't fit in necessarily with one group. And biases are taught from a very young age, in the home. And so there wasn't necessarily a lot of acceptance. So I didn't grow up with a huge friend group. Everywhere we moved to, I would make one or two friends, and those would be my steady friends. And then I had to adapt often and be flexible, and which is probably why I managed change so well as an adult. Because living in Connecticut and then living in Michigan, you make friends, but then if it's time to go, back in those days, there wasn't too much of a you wouldn't hear too much of a protest from me, because back in those days, the children, they did what the parents asked of them, and we didn't have too much of a say, or too much of an opinion like my
No, that's
children do
true.
today.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. No, because we didn't allow that, right? But
Right.
all that being said, that doesn't mean that it's 100% right, even in that situation, right? Did you feel confused? Did you feel like you wasn't worthy? Did you feel that something's missing? Yeah, you only had a couple of friends, but was that because you didn't think other people liked you, or you were still, because one of the things is, I remember, when I was growing up, and this, Uncle Troy and Auntie D and Auntie Carlos, they look totally different than me,
Hmm.
right? They're lighter, they're fairer skinned. I was the dark skinned one. I was the older one. And so when I was living at home, and I see my brothers and sisters, and they're my brothers and sisters, but they don't look like me,
Hmm.
right? All of a sudden, it just bothered me, right? Because I
Hmm.
was looking for somebody to look like me. My mother looked like me, right? But I
Hmm.
didn't. I didn't see me. My father. I didn't. So that thing bothered. I didn't say nothing to nobody,
Right.
right? But it really internally bothered me, because it's like, I don't fit in here, okay? Because, a lot of colorism and stuff was going on and still goes on. And so being dark skinned, at least I thought, was a negative.
Right.
And then kids would tease me at school and call me, black, whatever, Tarbit. And
Hmm.
these wasn't white kids, to be fair. Okay, these were
Hmm.
black kids. Okay, and so if you were lighter skinned, everybody loved you. Okay, but if you were darker skinned, then you were the bottom of the bottom. And so
Right.
growing up that way, and then seeing my brothers and sisters who were lighter skinned, it made me feel, like I said, inferior. And it bothered me. I didn't even want to wear white shirts or any light colors, because I didn't want, I thought it would accentuate my dark skin, right?
Hmm.
So talk about, did you have any of that? And if you didn't, that's fine. But was there, times where you felt like misaligned or not connected, or, confused or shamed? Let me hear it.
Absolutely. Um, Dating back to as far as like sixth and seventh grade in Middletown. I remember I was in middle school there, and there are these groups. It was a group of, actually, we had a large black population at that school. It was, I think, Woodrow Wilson, let's say. And then the guys would probably, looking back now, they probably had a crush on me, but they teased me to no end, and I was so frustrated. They would say things like, "You ain't white," or excuse me, "You ain't black. You can't be black." And then me, I'm like, "But I am." And I'm naive. I'm trying to prove, like, my mom's black. You could see her when she picks me up today. What's your mom's name? Stephanie. Her name, that's a white name. Your mom ain't black. I'm like, oh my God. So it's like having to prove to them, that I am, in fact, black. And then, like, getting braids. Oh, look at the white girl with braids, because my mom would keep my hair done, and just little things like that. And then, even going a little bit further when I got to like eighth grade, ninth grade, and into high school, um, terms like, oh, she's a mutt. She's so mixed up. She don't know what she is. Or, you know, a house in,
Right.
like more coarser, language like that. And it's just, it's ignorance. And I hate to say it, but whoa, we could be professional roasters. I mean, in school, and kids
And
are
this
are
from black
cruel.
kids,
These are
right?
from black kids, yeah.
Right. So
Yep.
it's not white kids saying that; it's black kids.
Yeah. Yep. And back then I was very shy, and, very to myself, and not really confident in myself. And so I just kind of let them talk and say what they wanted to say, but I internalized it a lot, and it really did damage.
When you said it did damage, like what do you mean?
I think it fed that narrative of m- a lack of identity, and not really being sure where I fit in or who I am. Hearing at home, I'm beautiful by you, and hearing how proud you are of me, and wanting to accept that and wanting to wear that, but then like going out into the world and, just being browbeaten with all of the negativity and all of the labels and things like that.
It was interesting. You never, as far as I know, you never came home and said anything.
I didn't say anything about a lot of things when I was younger, and I don't I to this day I'm not really sure why I didn't. Um, but I've recently had a conversation with my bio dad too, and he's like, "You didn't ask for much. You were pretty quiet. You weren't a spoiled brat like other people on the outside might think you were. I had to ask you, like, do you need new shoes? Do you need a new pair of jeans?" I just, I don't know why I was so quiet.
Well, and to be fair, when I was going through those things, I didn't tell nobody, right? I didn't come
Hmm.
home crying and saying, "Mama, they called me this, they called me that." I was up. I remember one time when your auntie D said something to me, right? She was mad at me and called me a black something, and then your grandmother heard her and like slapped her and like, don't you ever call your brother like that, but
Hmm.
I didn't cry, but it was just what I was getting from when I went to school,
Hmm.
right? And now I get it when I get home, right? So, but to
Right.
be fair, I internalized that for years. I never said that. So I definitely understand it. So let me ask you this, you know, how did, because you're a leader now,
Hmm.
okay? And you're in corporate America. How did your upbringing and cultural heritage, how that, how did any of those things that you dealt with help you today in terms of being able to lead teams and work with people and be empathetic and all those type things?
I believe, for without a shadow of a doubt, yes, it has. One of the things that I lead from is from my personal experience. And one of the reasons why I went into the career that I chose is because I always thought that HR was cold, and intimidating and sterile feeling, and it very opposite of anything human.
It's time to rethink your protein. AgriLab's protein bars are crafted with high quality protein, double the leucine, and enriched branched chain amino acids, essential for optimal muscle recovery. Finally, a protein bar that works as hard as you do. So visit agrilabs.com and use the code BEP to get 20% off. That's agrilabs.com, promo code BEP.
And with my background, actually started in customer service and serving people and supporting people. Um, I found that going into that, but for human resources, was my niche because I could give people a different experience. I could gently disarm people to make them feel more comfortable in approaching, HR, whether it's for something simple like, changing paperwork for their direct deposit to like blowing a whistle on, something that's going on that's, affecting them in their job. I wanted to be that advocate, not just for an organization or a corporation, but I wanted there to be a balance between I'm here and I advocate for the organization, but I also advocate for the leaders, and we're not going to forget about the team members because there is no corporation or organization without the team members. So that was my motivation. And as far as empathy, like my walk of life spans so many different experiences. I've been in a place where, we wonder if there's going to be enough. We also have been in a place of plenty, right? And I remember both experiences, and it being close to that experience, it helps me navigate how I need to show up for this individual.
When you say being close to what experience, the plenty or not having enough?
Being close to both of them.
Got it. Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. So just real quick though, I want to back up because your father Sam said you didn't ask for a whole lot, right?
Hmm.
But when you were with me, I remember it was this time you were outside playing. I think I was trying to get some sleep, and you ran in and said, "Daddy, this kid down the street, Will, is bothering me, right?" And then
Hmm.
I said, don't worry about him. Leave him alone, right? Just go back out and play because I was trying to get some sleep. And then you came in like 15 minutes later, woke me up. Daddy, Will is bothering me. And remember that? And I got really mad. I was like, all right, go ahead. And I went outside
Hmm.
and I ran up to him and, Will, if you remember that. And then he was like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Never bothered you again, right?
Yep. Yep.
Let me ask you this. So I want to ask you a term, and I want to hear your thoughts. What does it mean to be intergenerational redeemer?
So, an intergenerational redeemer is having to stand in the middle of two generations. You see the things that the people that have gone before you. For this case, I'm going to say all of my parents and my grandparents. Um, they had to sacrifice. They have endured, biases and discrimination. My grandfather came from Texas up to Michigan to work in the fields. Um, so he had been working since he was a very young boy, and work was all he knew. And so, with all of the sacrifices that you all have made, and with the experiences where you had to, hold that in your chest and just keep going, put your head down and keep going. Um, and then me here now, um, living in the age that I live in now, and also having a generation behind me that's my legacy. Um, there it's so interesting because I can connect with both generations, right? But then also identify that there are some very traumatic situations that I may not be aware of that you all had to live through and process to the best of your ability. And the best of your ability may not look like what my best is this day and age. So, there are different modalities of therapy nowadays. There are different resources and information available to help you, you know, get over things that had been actually happening for generations, um, but nobody really having the capacity to think like, hey, um, so it seems like there's a pattern here. We don't really talk about things. We kind of just sweep them under the rug and we keep on going like nothing ever happened. But I don't remember. It must have been in my younger 20s where I was like, that's done. I can't like ignore things anymore, and I'm gonna call them out. And I know I get on people's nerves because I always want togetherness and I always want like there to be, reconciliation, but that's a part of, instead of me wondering like what's my purpose here, why am I here, I know God put me here for a reason. It's like it just hit me like a ton of bricks, I would say, within the last 2 weeks. This intergenerational redeemer is not a thing, but it's who I am. It's who I'm called to be.
So give me some examples, right? Give us some examples of when you say, you know, your parents and all the things that we, had to deal with and stuff to that nature. We did to our best of our ability. But go a little bit deeper than that.
Okay. So for instance, my dad, my bio dad is a Marine. He was a Marine. He served, right? I know for a fact that there are different things that he saw while he was in the service. I know that there were things that affected him, but because of the type of man he is, or um, the way that he processes things, I will never know in detail, in depth, right? So I can
Mm-hmm.
only imagine. Um, but those things shaped how he then parented me,
Mm-hmm.
and how he interacts with me, and things like that. Same with my mother. There were very deep, deeply troubling and traumatic things that happened to her, throughout her childhood, and throughout her upbringing, and even when she had me. Um, some of them I'm aware of, but there are a lot of things that I don't know about fully. I can only imagine. But they all create patterns within us. And I'm not a mental health professional, but I have accessed, those modalities and those therapies for over a decade. And so I'm very self aware and um, I use, the tools that I'm given. I put them into use. And so, with that being said, even Nana, I know that she has like a rich, colorful history and upbringing. And all I saw was this magical woman who was beautiful, who took a lot of pride in how she loved her family and took a lot of pride in her appearance. Um, but now, as a woman who has reared children herself and who has grandchildren herself, I can look back at Nana at different seasons of our lives together and just have so much compassion and empathy for her because I don't know what she was carrying. I know it was
Right,
something,
right, right,
but I don't know
right,
exactly what it was.
right.
But now here I stand with having those lived experiences, with, my nana who's not here anymore, with my granny who's no longer here, my abuelo who's no longer here with us. But just having some of their story and knowing that I was their first grandchild, the oldest one, right? Knowing how much love that they poured into me and how they all raised me and put their mark on me with their bare hands. I feel like it is a part of my life's work to make sure that the legacy that they left, that we are solid, that we're good, and that the legacy that's coming behind us is even better than we are. So just amongst my cousins on the Franklin side who are like my siblings, because of how we all grew up together. Um, I'm proud to say that man, we are a reflection of you guys, but like the 2.0 version. Everybody is, accessed therapy at one time or another. Like we recognize like we need to be better. We need help. We want to do better. Our parents, one thing that you guys had solid and down was the love. You guys poured so much love into us, and discipline and correction is love. We all know that. But I'm talking about memories upon memories of laughter and playing games and traveling, and y'all made it happen for us. So I just wanted to salute you guys and honor you guys for that. But we want to take it further.
Yeah, and so thank you, and thank you for sharing too, right? And here's the thing, you know, one of the things that's always tough, and especially, you know, and I just want to say in the Black community, because this can happen in the white community, it can happen in any community, right? Is those generational curses where, the parent, had children and they were limited in all different type of facets, how to be a parent, educational issues, career, and then more importantly, how to be an example for their kids. Because to your point, it's really about making sure that your kids become better than you, right? And sometimes what happens is, people want that, but they don't do all the right things to do that. And to your point, because they're carrying their own baggage, they have traumatic things that happen to them. And so they never dealt with it. And then so at the end of the day, then you have a cycle of generations repeating itself because what is the next generation going to do? They're going to do exactly what their parents did. And because they think that's the way to do stuff, right? And then the next generation and the next generation. And you just kind of spoke about it when you talked about therapy, right? We're growing up. If you went and got therapy, it didn't happen. People wouldn't even think that, right? It took me a while to finally go and have therapy, right? Because there was a mental, taboo about it, right? And so things are different. But one of the things I always, for me, it was trying to break that generational curse, right? Because I know your Nana wanted me to be better. And I didn't want to fall into the same traps, okay? Because then, your nieces, Michaela Madison, we wanted to set them up so then that they can then be able to prosper and then break those cycles. All right. And that doesn't mean that they're perfect. They have their own issues. Everybody's got issues. Okay. Everybody. So it doesn't matter about that. But it is to your point about understanding that there's ways to get help and it's okay to get help. And love does conquer all. So you're 100% about right that. But the thing about love doesn't teach all. Okay, love can, you remember love. Love make you feel good, and love knowing that somebody's got your back, regardless, unconditionally. But it doesn't teach you how to be a man or a woman. It doesn't teach you to do the right thing no matter what. It doesn't teach you all the things that you need to do to take it to the next level and build your own family and make sure that they're squared away and, bring your kids up in a way where they're going to shine and set them up where they're, using the talents that God gave them to be able to thrive versus just go outside and play.
Right. Nalani, my 14-year-old is like, go where and do what?
Right. And so it takes more than that. And so unless you break that cycle, people tend to continue to do that. That generation continues to do that. And then that generation tends to do that. And that's where you don't get the growth that you need. And a lot of that's why I'm excited that you came on to share, is to really acknowledge it personally. Okay, that's the key. Acknowledge. When I went to see a therapist, Samada, you know, and I was doing things that I wasn't even aware of. Okay, didn't even know that I created habits because of the fears I had about certain things.
Mm.
Okay, but then once I went to therapy and then I explained what happened when I was a kid, then it all made sense. Then I was like, wow, I didn't even know that, right?
Yep.
So what you're saying is 100%, and being that redeemer of trying to not just understand, but try to set up the next generation is really the key. Now, let me throw this, let's pivot, because I want to ask you about, something that a lot of African Americans, Hispanic people of color have to do with in corporate America. It's called code switching. Give me your experience of code switching in your own professional endeavors.
So I can remember maybe about 10 years ago, knowing, having like a vision forward, what I wanted to do with my career. Um, the executives always are drawn to me. But then my friends in the workplace would be like, don't draw too much attention, to us over here. Just like let them come in, let them come out. But because I knew where I wanted to go, I would make conversations with them and I would ask them questions, and then I would get like invitations to things that they are inviting their other, C-suite partners and colleagues too. And it may have been considered brown nosing, but there's one thing about the whole code switching thing. Um, I know how to conduct myself according to whatever room I'm in, but I have learned that I don't necessarily have to change who Samada is. You want to know why? Because a lot of those C suite people are talking and acting just like normal human beings. They're not all they're human beings. They're not as
They're
stuffy
not
when you get in those.
stars. You know what I'm saying? They're
No.
not they're not Batman or Wonder Woman, right? They're
Nope.
regular people.
Yep. Yep. And they have one too many drinks at the corporate functions too. So I mean, we're all in the same boat. So once you demystify them and strip them down to like, okay, we're all humans. I respect you because of your position and your role. But I think that that gives you an opportunity to access them, whether it's their experiences, their wisdom, their advice, their counsel, their mentoring, you know what I mean, from a different lens. And once they see that you aren't acting strange around them, they're more apt to open up to you. Now, I understand that that is not the experience that a lot of my brothers and sisters have had, in corporate America. Um, but that's just my approach. I build rapport very quickly, and people are drawn to me. Um, I probably get that from you because, you could walk into a room and say a couple words to somebody, and then by the time you look up again, you got eight people surrounding you. So it's the charisma, it's the drip.
So, but based on that, what would your message be to younger professionals of color who feel pressure to assimilate?
I would say keep your eyes open because you're not crazy. You see what you see and you feel what you feel. But in that, I would not over adjust or over correct. I would go in there and be as authentic as you can, make relationships and make your allies where you need to make them. Um, if you're a person that's an introvert, I'm not saying become an extrovert, but stretch yourself sometime. Stretch yourself, come out of your comfort zone, go to a networking event, especially if you want to position yourself for promotion, and document, document. One of the things that I am known for is my assertiveness. Because if there is something that's not right that's going on, I am going to say something about it. And my style is not like, how we grew up in Hartford. Of course, I'm polished. um, but I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so respected by my executive counterparts is because they know that I'm going to come respectfully. They know that I'm going to come factually and not based off of emotion or how I feel. But you're going to be able to see a pattern or a trend, and then I'm going to ask for there to be a change in the behavior. And I say like that, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're not going to advocate for yourself, I'm telling you, there's nobody else in the workplace that will.
Nobody. You can forget about it. You can forget about it. You got to build your own brand. Totally agree with that. You mind if I tell a quick story on this?
Oh, go ahead.
So years ago, this was 20 something years ago, I worked at this company and in the city, and my boss was a very buttoned up dude. I was an account executive. I was a salesperson. He was our VP, and he liked me and stuff. The thing was, is that him and I would go on meetings together, and eventually he wanted me to be him. He wanted me to talk like him, all those type things. And to be fair, I tried. Right? I remember him and I went to Pittsburgh client meeting, and I had a couple of slides to present. I remember staying up all night long, 4 o'clock in the morning, making sure I get my part of the presentation down. Didn't get no sleep. That's how, and so I can always relate to young professionals when you're trying to build your career. So it was insane, right? And then I remember him and I going on another meeting, and I was presenting and I was fumbling because I was trying to be him. And then I remember after that, I was like, I'm done with this. All right. Think about he was, you ever see the movie Trading Places?
Hmm.
He was Winthorpe. Okay. And I was Eddie Murphy.
Right.
Okay. And then I came to a point, I was like, I can't do this. I have to just be me. I'm going to be buttoned up, but I'm going to be me. I am unique. This is who I am. Blah, 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 blah. Guess what? I got promoted. Okay. I became the national sales manager because I was me.
Hmm.
Okay. And that's the one thing that I always will tell people is that the reason they hired you is because of you.
Right.
Okay. And you should always be you and don't try to be anybody else. Now, is there skills or certain things you need to work on? To better yourself? Absolutely. Right. But you gotta be you. You gotta deliver you. You gotta speak you. You gotta stand you, all those things because your uniqueness makes you special. Okay. So I just wanted to piggyback because that's a real life experience that I had. Okay. And
Hmm.
that's a lesson that I had to learn. And I learned that lesson. Now, talking about real life experiences, you've been diagnosed with ADHD. Okay.
Hmm.
So talk a little bit about that. When did you get diagnosed and how is it based on all the things that you deal with from work, your ministry, how has it affect you and how have you come to understand what this diagnosis means for you and how you can show up on a daily basis?
For sure. So, I have always had to work harder to zoom in and focus and be present. When I was growing up, I was a daydreamer and I was a talker. And I was frequently getting phone calls home from my teachers saying, we had to move her in the seating chart again. She's now at the front of the room by my desk. And I just never I don't know. I just thought I was just different, right? I wasn't as motivated as other people. Um, when I applied myself, super smart. But something I think in the last 2-ish years just wasn't clicking. And I mean, I don't have I guess the traditional story where I went straight to college out of high school and got my 4-year degree and all of that stuff. So I worked my way up the latter in corporate America. And it's by God's grace that I am where I am today. I'm very grateful, love my job, am getting my bachelor's degree currently, but I have a high profile job. And when it comes to deadlines, I never would miss a deadline, but procrastination was a thing. I would wait until the last minute. And even the simplest task that I know would take me like less than 5 minutes, they just seemed huge. And so um, I just was out of curiosity, Googled, what does ADHD look like in an adult woman? And I could literally check off like every single box. And so I made an appointment, got a referral, went to the appointment with the psychiatrist, the psychiatrist, the psychologist, because it was a specialist that had to give me the evaluations. Went through the evaluation process, was diagnosed at age 42 with ADHD, and I felt like everything in the world made sense. I could look at my life and be like, that's why, I struggled so much with this, or that's why, I can start cleaning in a bedroom and end up in the basement going through old pictures and boxes. You know what I mean? Just random things. And I got excited. I know, like, it seems, like someone might grieve about it, but to me, I was able to put puzzle pieces together and there was a solution. And so I started medication. And my first week on the medication, I was able to do probably about 2 weeks worth of work in like 2 days. And so um and it's helped me, with my youngest child who is also neurodivergent, um have a sense of connection there because I understand a little bit what it is that she goes through, and I'm able to help her with the executive functioning part of things. As I learn, I teach her,
Right.
and so that's been helpful.
It's interesting though, going back to what you were saying about generational redeemer. I mean, when you were a kid, we didn't know. I didn't even know anything about ADHD, right?
Hmm.
And so we didn't see. This is the things, and these are things that I kind of regret as being a young parent and in talking about generational curses, right? Is that here you are, or Randy, or Antoine, or whoever, have issues with certain things, and we just thinking they just don't want to behave, right? Because that's all we knew, right? They're
Hmm.
not listening, okay?
Right.
Versus that there could be something, behavioral from a biological standpoint, or or emotion standpoint. We didn't even think of that. We didn't even know it. Okay,
Hmm.
and so that's the thing that really bothers me, and that's the thing that for me to be the best person, best parent is really to sit back and learn and recognize that it's okay not to know everything. Everything that your mother did before, that was great for that, but that doesn't mean that's the way of the world. And those are things that parents need to understand, right? So let me ask you this. You and I have talked openly a lot about you deal with depression, anxiety, so, and then obviously you're leading a team. So, how do you deal with that when you're carrying this, invisible weight that nobody can see, that you're masking, and at the same time trying to show up positive? We got this. I'm all for you. Talk a little bit about that.
So the interesting thing that I learned as I was going through my divorce is that I would bury myself in my work because I was excelling in growing and being promoted quickly in work. And so I felt like I'm winning here. I'm going to focus right here. And at the time, I did not have what I felt were like the tools to focus inward. And so I'm like, that'll be there. She's never going anywhere. But it does weigh on you. And so if you can imagine, and I got a vision a couple days ago. If you can imagine a hologram of Samada, right? I was like five different people. You had the ministry Samada, the parent Samada, the wife Samada, the community, servant, community leader. You had corporate Samada. They were all, these people. But I was really asking God in those times, like, I feel very like spread thin. How do I be great, in what I love to do, which is my career, but then how do I also like bring myself back in so I'm whole, a whole person? And so to answer your question, it was not an easy journey at all. I had to fall apart and break before I was able to actually come back together. And what I mean by that is once you stuff and suppress for so long and you don't actually deal with whatever emotion is, in at the surface or in your face, and the more you ignore it, it's gonna come up again. And if you don't know how to deal with it or handle it, um, it can show up in a lot of different ways. And to be 1000% transparent with you, for me it manifested in um, suicidal thoughts. Now, to preface that, I never had any desire to do it, you know what I mean? But the feeling of not wanting to be here anymore because the weight just seems so heavy. And so I had a day, and this is when everything changed for me. I had 3 days of utter darkness where I was, you know, just, I couldn't say much. I was in tears the entire time. I could not sleep. I had not slept well for like a month and a half. And there was something that had triggered this whole downward spiral, which was a breakup. Um, and so I asked my oldest daughter, I said, "Hey, I'm not feeling like myself. These are the feelings that I'm experiencing. And I know that I don't want to do anything. And so I'm asking you for help." And so she took me to our local mental health hospital. And I did intake there, and I ended up staying there for 5 days. And in there, woof, that whole experience changed my life. I was advised by family members not to go. I was, advised just, let's just give you a whole bunch of sleeping pills. You need sleep. Because there was such a stigma on we can't let Samada go to the hospital because that's
Right,
going to make her look bad.
right, right,
People are going to, her reputation is going to be tampered with. But I didn't care. I just wanted to live. I wanted to get out of that cloud of darkness. And so with that being said, my daughter stuck with me through the intake process. She gave me a hug, was like, "Don't worry about anything at home." Between her and my mom, they watched Nalani for me, and we had a tearful goodbye, but she said, "I am so proud of you, Mom. I'm so proud of you for doing this." And everything that they had available for me in those walls, I call it my stint at Shady Pines. I took advantage of it. I was in every group session, every journal prompt, every one-on-one. After I slept for a day and a half, but after that, I was front and center in everything that they had available for us to take advantage of. And the most important thing that I learned that I had not ever learned before in my life was radical acceptance. And I had never learned to radically accept anything. I thought because I was cute, I can manipulate and control my way into getting, what I wanted, the outcome that I wanted, um, and never learned to accept what was. And when you fail to accept what is, you prolong your own suffering. And so I was suffering in a cycle of suffering because I refused to accept what was. And so once I learned that and came out, that was a year ago last month. I have never been hopeless another day in my life and have never had that same feeling of despair. And I thank everyone who was a part of that journey, for giving me the tools that I needed to come from that place. And now translating it into, and this is a long response, but translating it into my work now, you know, there's a huge stigma on, I don't want people to know that I'm depressed. I don't want people to know that you've put too much on my plate. People don't want to seem weak or incapable of doing the role that they've been hired to do. And so they will continue to say yes to projects. They will continue to stay up all hours of the night to for their output to look a certain way.
If you like what you hear and want to join us on this journey of making uncomfortable conversations comfortable, please subscribe to a Black Executive Perspective podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe now to stay connected for more episodes that challenge, inspire, and lead the change.
But what I'm finding is there are people that are hurting and they are afraid to say something because of how leadership will look at them. My leader, she had my back the entire way, and she was so supportive of me, but not everybody is blessed like that. And so one of the things that I've taken very personally is I don't have a problem with sharing my testimony. I do it with wisdom. However, I help leaders navigate when their team members are faced with a crisis, because a lot of them are like, what do I do? And I help them try to navigate that as delicately as possible, but then also giving them resources and information so that they can actually be an ally.
That's awesome. I mean, well, number one, I love you a lot.
I
Thanks
love
for
you.
sharing that. I could imagine what you went through, what you've gone through, and it takes a strong person to recognize that they need help and is willing to go, regardless of what the family says, or we got to protect your brand and all that type things. You wouldn't be here if you wouldn't went there, right? So let
Right.
me ask you this: what does wholeness mean to you now, based on that?
Wow. Wholeness is wholeness has affected the way that I show up at work. Um, we all have gifts, we all have talents. Um, and you can be operating, out of a gift because that's what you're graced to do, right? But there's such a fullness that comes when you make the choice to say, I know that I have some internal struggles and I don't necessarily know how to get to the bottom of them, but I'm going to try. So I'm going to start making phone calls, I'm going to start watching podcasts, or I need to get my hands on some resources to get better. Once I did that, there's no blueprint. There's no blueprint for that. You just kind of have to go by faith and reach out, make phone calls, and make connections. And if it's a good fit, amen. If it's not, keep it moving. But operating out of your gift versus operating out of as a whole person, I feel like I have, this might sound strange, but more authority. I have more authority to stand as the HR leader, because of what I've gone through. And I'm not, we can make the business operate and function all day long, but I'm here for the people. And I think that me being whole, now I'm able to lead and influence leaders on how to lead from a whole place. And if they're not, I'm able to challenge, I'm able to influence, I'm able to correct. And at the heart of it all, they trust me. I call myself everybody's favorite HR lady. And, it shows because they continue to reach out, they continue to call, and they trust my counsel.
Let me ask you this. That's awesome. The favorite HR lady. What's your message to people who right now, who are watching this, who are listening to this, who may be in a leadership position? They're trying to lead, but they're healing at the same time. What would you say to them?
I would say that you are doing very sacred work. And as you go through that, it's just as much about you as a person as it is about the work and the people that you're leading. So whatever feeds your soul, whether that's, finding time to steal away and take a long ride, or, um, invest in a hobby, do something that's going to pour back into yourself, because we cannot lead from an empty place. And that's one of the things that I've been challenged and tasked with, and it's been a game changer for me. One of the things that is free therapy for me is dancing. I love to dance. And, it's a different type of expression. It's fun. It's free most of the time. And that fills my cup. So you can find me on somebody's dance floor on a weekend, and I am able to show up back up on Monday after, folks done wore me out on Friday and show back up fresh, ready to go, and ready to affect, those who I'm leading to be better.
Awesome. Awesome. So, did you have some questions for me?
I did. So I in my true career coach hat, I always tell people that are looking for new jobs, make sure you come with three good questions that shows that you have done your homework and your research on the company. And
Okay.
so I thought it would be fitting to close out like this. So I have three quick questions. Dad, what is your most unsuspected guilty pleasure that nobody would ever think of?
That's a unexpected guilty pleasure. That's a good one. Unexpected guilty pleasure. Um, I'm a big chocolate eater,
I
so
was going to say, if you don't tell them, I will tell them.
yeah, I love chocolate. Right?
I
That's
was going to
my.
say Oreos.
It's funny. I ate a couple last night, to be fair, but I don't eat them as much as I used to, right? But canned chocolate bars and stuff. I love chocolate, so yeah, that's my thing.
Okay, that's fair. And what is your favorite memory about me or your favorite quality about me?
Well, I think I told you. Well, number one, favorite memory is that your kissanada,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we
Mm-hmm.
danced when you turned 16. That was awesome. You were so mature and beautiful, which you still are, but that was the thing. So that was my favorite. And then the Will story too was my favorite. You coming away, Daddy, he's bothering me, blah, 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 blah. So that's my favorite. And then what was the other question? You said my
Your
favorite
favorite
thing.
quality about me.
Oh, so, you know, you were always a loving person. You always showed love. You always, um, and you were, you know, your father did say it right. You didn't ask for a lot, and you were always accepting of new things and new people. We moved around a lot, and there was a lot of turmoil, and not turmoil in a bad way, just a lot of things going on. We were young kids trying to figure out our way in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't cause any problems. You whatever we were down with. That's why when I hear, the things that you went through, and even the thing that you dealt with last year, I'm heartbroken. And I always felt like I could have been. I wish number one, we were way too young to be married and be parents, and that's what I would recommend to anybody. You know what? You're 22, 23, 24. Stop. You don't even know you, and you're trying
Yeah.
to be parents, so that's the one thing that I learned from it. I wish I was better then, but you were just a great kid. Okay, you were always accepting. You always was loving, and that was qualities. You never complained. It was you was the love of my life.
Aw, thanks, Dad. Now you're down on yourself, but my last question is, what is one jewel of advice that you would offer for newly blended families? Because in your eyes, you probably don't think you did it well, but in my eyes, it was a cornerstone of my childhood. I think you did it splendidly because look it, we're still here. You're still my dad. That's how well we blended.
Yeah, I mean, so you know, and again, you talked about healing while leading, right? And so I can relate to that because when we all came together, me and your mother, you were 3 years old. We got married, right? And and then I had to, I don't want to say deal with, but I had your biological family, your father and your grandmother and grandfather and aunts, and I had my family. So I was, to be fair, I was nervous because I had to deal with a lot of different people.
Mhm.
Okay. I never said nothing, but and I was young. And um, the advice I would give to blended families is that, communication is key. And more importantly, recognize because it is blended, everybody's got to be on the same page. And the parents need to spend time with their kids and really walk them through of this is our family and make sure that everybody feels secure and loved because you went through stuff as a kid that I knew nothing about,
Mhm.
okay, to be honest. And I think you know communication is the key, and it can't be kids just do what we tell you to do. You got to
Mhm.
listen to the kids. They're a part of it. They have brains. They're human. They're dealing with stuff. So you have to have all the communication. You got to be willing to accept and listen to everyone. And then, nothing is perfect. Adapt and make changes and try to perfect it. At the end of the day, everybody's doing the best they can. Okay.
Mhm.
But the one thing that you want to make sure is that the home is everybody's castle. And that the home, the kid, you can't control what. Well, I couldn't control when you went out to work. I mean, went out to school and they were calling your names. But what I
Mhm.
could control is that you felt love, you felt listened to, you felt heard, you felt you had a safe space. Don't when you came home, the world was blocked out. Those are the things that's most important, right?
Mhm.
And communicating to making sure that everybody feels that they're loved, they have a safe space, and that their words and their thoughts matter.
Mhm.
They matter,
Yeah.
right? And if you can do that, everything else will take care of itself. That's just my 2 cents.
I love that. I think that's a perfect way to put that. And I have to say this, and you'll remember it, but go Diamond.
Go Diamond. That's when I was in the Amway business, right? I was going to get
Yes.
rich, right? But
Yep.
to be fair, I learned so much in there, and that's what catapulted me to where I am today. So, sometimes you think things are going to come, you're going to do things, and there's going to be a direct result, uh, uh, um, a direct finding or a direct reward, I should say, a direct reward
Mhm.
that comes directly from it. And sometimes it's not. It comes from other places. But had you not gone through that and learned all the things to help you grow, you wouldn't have been prepared for all the other things that come through. So, but for you, final thoughts. Final thoughts. What do you want to leave the audience?
Final thoughts. I want to leave the audience with this. Um, Learn who you are. Take some time to actually learn who you are. Become familiar with yourself. We look in the mirror and sometimes we like rush away, because you don't want to deal with that, or it's a little bit mystical, or but really get acquainted intimately and inwardly with who you are, what makes you tick, what are your dislikes, what are your likes, and show up as authentically as you possibly can. Some people are going to love you, some people are going to hate you. we bless them both and we move on and we continue to build on in this path called life. And do whatever you can to be an ally to people. Be gentle, be soft with people that you know are going through a hard time. Be an ear. If you can't be an ear, find an ear for that person. And I tell you that will go a long way. If you don't have the capacity to do it, there's someone else around that will have the capacity, and you still are having a hand in changing that individual's life because you sounded the alarm for them. So that's what I leave you with.
I love those. That is awesome. Thank you. Final question. How can a Black Executive Perspective podcast help you?
Mm, I think not in any new way that hasn't been done right now. Keep having uncomfortable conversations. Those are my favorite. I love healthy confrontation and keep winning, Dad. I am literally climbing up on the shoulders of everything that you've built over the last 30 years. And I think that you pioneering all of this ground for me has made it easier for me. So I honor you and I thank you, Dad.
Well, I thank you for coming on. I thank you for being who you are. And it takes a lot of courage to come on and share. So thank you. I love you a lot. And I want
Love you more.
to, thank Samada Tobar for coming on a Black Executive Perspective podcast and sharing her perspective and her story. You stay right there. So I think it's now time for
Tony's Tidbit.
And so the tidbit today, real leadership isn't about having it all together. It's about having the courage to be transparent, to bring your whole self into spaces where influence happens. Healing is not the finish line. It's a process. And leaders who embrace their humanity often connect more deeply, build more trust, create more compassionate cultures. By showing honestly about your story, your boundaries, your growth, you give others permission to do the same. You lead not despite your journey, but through it. Because powerful leadership isn't flawless. It's authentic. It's the quiet strength in saying, I'm still becoming, and I still belong at this table. And you heard a lot of that from Samada Tobar today on a Black Executive Perspective podcast. Don't forget to check out the next Need to Know on a Black Executive Perspective podcast. Dr. Burton dives into the timely and crucial topics you don't have time to deal with. She'll bring more insight and stuff that's happening in our world to deepen your understanding of the issues that matter. You don't want to miss it. Every Thursday, Need to Know by Dr. Nasinga Burton on a Black Executive Perspective. And don't forget to check out and be part of our roundtable on our next Pull Up, Speak Up, where bold, unfiltered voices tackle today's most provocative issues, sharp perspectives, real talk, call to action. Tune in to join the revolution. And so if this is your first time listening and watching a Black Executive Perspective podcast, our goal, our mission is to decrease and eliminate all forms of discrimination. And for us to do this, we're asking everyone to follow this acronym, which we call LESS, L-E-S-S. The L stands for learn. You want to learn about other racial and cultural nuances that you're not familiar with. That's going to enlighten you. And then the E stands for empathy. Now, since you've learned, you can put yourself in your friends' and colleagues' shoes because now you understand what they're dealing with. The first S stands for share. You want to share what you've learned to other people so they can be enlightened. And then the final S stands for stop. We want to stop discrimination as it walks in your path. So if Aunt Jenny or Uncle Joe says something at the Sunday dinner table that's inappropriate, you say, Aunt Jenny, Uncle Joe, we don't believe that, we don't say that, and you stop it right there. So if everyone can incorporate less, L-E-S-S, we'll build a more fair, more understanding world, and we all will see the change that we want to see because less will become more. You can watch and listen to a Black Executive Perspective podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on our social channels of LinkedIn, X, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook at A Black Exec. For our fabulous guests, Samada Tobar, I'm Tony Tidbit. We talked about it. We learned about it. We laughed about it. We're going to continue to strive about it, and we're going to thrive about it. We love you, and guess what? We're out.
A Black Executive Perspective.